Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we are literally cracking the code of modern computer science, discrete mathematics. Now, if the word mathematics immediately makes you think of endless calculations and confusing numbers, well, just pause right there. Today, we're not crunching numbers, we are learning a language, a precise, structured, and incredibly powerful language that actually builds the entire digital world around us. Here's our syllabus for today. We're going to build our understanding from the ground up. We'll start with a language of logic, move to connecting the dots, jump right into the world of sets, followed by operating on sets, and finally wrap up with defining relationships.
Okay, section 1, the language of logic. Let's kick off this bottom-up journey by exploring the absolute basic alphabet of this new mathematical language.
The core of our approach today is summarized perfectly by this one idea. Talking and writing about mathematics remains the best way to understand mathematics. So we aren't just looking for solutions to a given task here, we are literally learning the grammar of a whole new language. So let's test our grammar right out of the gate. Is 4 plus x equals 15 a mathematical statement? Take a second to think about it. I mean, it looks like math, right? It's got numbers, an equal sign, but the answer is actually no. Because it contains that unknown variable x, the sentence depends entirely on what x actually is. Right now, it's neither true nor false. And in the strict language of logic, if a sentence cannot be definitively labeled as true or false, it is not a proper statement. Which brings us to what a true mathematical statement actually is. An atomic statement is a declarative sentence that is definitively true or false. For example, mobile numbers in Nigeria have 11 digits. That is a verifiable fact. It literally cannot be broken down any further. Compare that to a command like, go to the lecture room. It's an instruction, not a claim of truth, so it simply doesn't compute in our logical grammar. Moving on to section 2, connecting the dots. Now we transition from single words to complete sentences, combining those simple atomic statements into complex molecular ones. Just like in plain English, we use conjunctions to build bigger, better sentences. In logic, we rely on 5 primary connectives. We link sentential variables, which, by the way, are just capital letters like P and Q that stand in for atomic statements, using specific symbols. We've got an upward wedge for and, a downward wedge for or, an arrow for if-then, a double arrow for if and only if, and a little hook for not.
Let's actually look at one of these rules in action. P and Q is true whenever P and Q are both true. The magic here is that to determine if a massive molecular statement is true, we honestly don't need the messy real-world context. We just need to know their binary truth value and the strict rules binding them together. This exact and/or logic, that's what runs search engines when you look for specific terms or password checks when logging into an account. It is pure, calculated logic at work. All right, section 3, the world of sets. This is where we encounter the most fundamental objects in all of mathematics. So if logic is our grammar, sets are definitely the vocabulary. By informal definition, a set is simply an unordered collection of objects. We call these objects elements, and a set can have a finite number of them, or it can go on infinitely forever. When we write this out in our mathematical language, we use curly braces to enclose these objects. So if we have a set called A, and its elements are the numbers 1 and 2, we write it out as A equals, open curly brace, 1, 2, close curly brace. Super simple, clean, and highly organized. Now, when comparing sets, we use some highly specific notation. Take a subset. The symbol basically looks like a little U on its side with a line under it, which means every element in the first set is also in the second set. But look closely. Notice how that line underneath entirely vanishes for a proper subset? This means every element of the first set is absolutely in the second set, but that second set has extra elements the first one doesn't have. So it's a much tighter, more specific relationship. As you dive deeper into this language, you'll encounter a universal alphabet of special sets that mathematicians everywhere instantly recognize. That circle with the slash, that's the empty set. It contains absolutely nothing at all. U is the universal set, containing literally everything under investigation. Then we have N for non-negative integers, Z for all integers, Q for rational numbers, and R for real numbers. Honestly, memorizing these is kind of like learning your ABCs for discrete structures. Next up is section 4, operating on sets. With our vocabulary officially in place, let's learn how to manipulate these sets using specific operations.
Just like before, we can mathematically combine or subtract groups of objects, which is really similar to using or and in those logical statements we looked at earlier. Step 1 is the union, symbolized by that U shape, meaning the set of all elements in set A or set B or both. Step 2 is intersection, the upside-down U, requiring elements to be in both A and B simultaneously. And step 3 is difference, A\B, which basically leaves us with the elements in A strictly excluding anything that happens to also be in B.
When we operate on sets, we always have to identify if they overlap. Sets X and Y here are what we call disjoint sets because they share absolutely no common elements. Literally nothing in X is in Y. But sets A and B, those are non-disjoint. Why? Because they share that element D. Their intersection is not empty, so they definitely overlap. Now, I really want to emphasize this very elegant little formula, 2 to the power of n. This is exactly how we calculate the size of a power set. And a power set is simply the set of all possible subsets of a given set. The n in this formula represents the cardinality, or basically the number of elements in the original set. So if a set has a cardinality of 3, meaning it has 3 elements, its power set is going to contain 2 to the power of 3, which equals 8 unique subsets. It's just a beautiful example of how this mathematical language perfectly scales up.
Finally, we arrive at section 5, defining relationships. For our final grammar lesson today, we're going to look at how sets interact with each other in the real world through what we call relations.
You know, just as we categorize relationships in our own personal lives, mathematicians categorize relationships between elements in sets using 3 fundamental rules. First, a relation can be reflexive, meaning an element relates to itself, shown as x, x. Second, it can be symmetric, meaning if x relates to y, well then y must equally relate to x. And third, it can be transitive, which is basically a chain reaction. If x relates to y and y relates to z, then x must logically relate to z. Okay, if that sounds a bit abstract, let's use some relatable analogies. The relation sibling of is perfectly symmetric. If I am your sibling, you are automatically mine, whether you like it or not. Now, what about transitive? Well, taller than is transitive. If person A is taller than person B, and B is taller than C, then A is definitely, without a doubt, taller than C. But notice that parent of is not transitive. However, ancestor of absolutely is. And finally, the less than or equal to mathematical symbol, that is reflexive, because a number is always equal to itself.
So when a relation perfectly satisfies all 3 of those properties, meaning it is simultaneously reflexive, symmetric, and transitive, it earns the prestigious title of an equivalence relation, denoted by a triple bar symbol. This lets us create an equivalence class, which is basically a maximal subset where any 2 elements are perfectly related by all 3 properties. It represents total mathematical harmony.
We've covered a ton of ground today, moving from the most basic atomic statements all the way up to equivalence relations. And I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Knowing that set theory underlies all of modern mathematics, how does this abstract language of connectives and sets actually power the digital world you're using to experience this explainer right now? I mean, think about it. Every app, every piece of software, every single processor functions entirely on billions of tiny, binary true or false atomic statements, evaluated through logical connectives every single second. You now know the underlying language of the digital age. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we'll see you in the next explainer.
Meow.